I've got a feeling this video is going to be longer than usual, given I have 16 pages of notes and I've done very little preparation for it. This is kind of just an impulse what I'm doing today, so apologies as always for the lack of quality. So this is part 2 of the Sword of the Ember Knight free adventure that I will probably doing a proper formal scripted review on. Even though I've got these session recaps, I can really use these as notes, but still. And I look forward to it as well. This session took us for about 5 hours. I think we finished at about 11:30 in the evening. We started at 6 o'clock, and we played a much longer than we usually do. But we had about 15 minutes worth of break time in the entire time, so that wasn't too bad. And we made it. We made this last, and we had quite a triumphant session. Not that we would have minded dying, because this is the kind of session, the sort of adventure really, it's a sort of spin-off from the Lost Mine of Phandelver, so we're okay with our experimental level 3 characters dying and seeing how they were going to play, so that was good. So in the previous session we had basically been told to go to this cave to find the Sword of the Ember Knight, supposedly flaming sword that would end the Lich King that we had to face later on. And we knew the location of both, but we had to go to this cave first. And in doing so, we had slain some spiders, and we had a bit of difficulty with that, but fortunately we were able to move on. And just as we were getting ready to sort of rest up a bit, because we come across a nice bonfire, a nice little cozy room, we had been ambushed by some goblins and hobgoblins, or rather a hobgoblin. It was revealed rather there was like several goblins, a hobgoblin, and a goblin boss. And that, we're basically getting ready for a fight. The hobgoblin is staring us down, and he's saying, "We don't like unexpected guests, do we?" And the other goblin's like, "Ha ha ha, no, we don't. Shut up, boys." And then he proceeds to introduce himself as roll for initiative. He doesn't really. Just a little joke that I saw one time. Ha ha ha. So we roll for initiative because we can't negotiate with these things. We're basically just going to get into combat, and we have the order of initiative. I roll 15. Shoria rolls 14. I always have to preface this. I think that I, as a cleric of the grave, roll 15. Shoria is our warlock of the Archfey. Eliza is our Echo Knight fighter. This is something I believe I failed to mention earlier. Emil as well as our paladin, but I once again forgot to check what his oath was. I do believe it's Oath of Devotion. It's one of the lawful good ones, anyway, I can tell you that much. And we also had a new player as well join the game, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but yes, we have a new player join Group 89, and they made a triumphant entrance with initiative of 10. And they are, honestly, I can't say it. I couldn't say enough in the previous game that I really enjoyed having them with us, and I think they were a good fit for the group. There was a bit of criticism, which I'll save at the end of the video, but we've otherwise cleared that up, and now I think we're fairly confident to sort of play with one another, and I think now that that's been cleared up, we should be good to go. We're all good. The goblins, from what I understand, they roll quite low. One of the goblins had rolled a 12, another had rolled a 3. I don't think I got the goblin bosses initiative, and the hobgoblin had rolled low. RDM was using real dice this time. I think he's got gemstone dice. I'm not overly sure. Metal. I think he's got metal dice. I know he said he was trying to get himself a fancy fancy set rather. So a lot of those rolls weren't on screen, so I apologise for the notes not being there. So, because of the way the combat goes, I go first, and I'm asked what I'm going to do. So, and I really should have my screenshots up, shouldn't I, so I don't have to keep worrying about this. I'm towards the west of the room, and I just instantly I'm ready as all hell. Like, this is how I imagine like a fight in the graveyard would have gone down in Lost Man of Phandelver. I yell in Dwarvish, Eshvaru and Dongradon, which is it's on like Donkey Kong in English or common. So, and then I cast a Guiding Bolt. I roll a 20. I think it was a critical hit. I'm not sure. It just says roll 20. I do 11 damage to, I think, one of the goblin. I think it was like the hobgoblin. This armored, like quite well armored, like helmet and armor and shield and whatnot. And I kill him with 11 damage. I just launch this blast of holy energy and just explode him essentially with light and glitter going everywhere. I thought that was dead fancy. So one of the bigger, for some reason I put here orcs, I meant to say goblins, the goblin boss is quite shocked by this, and he sees the others like sort of look into one another, but they say, we can still take him, and so indeed they do. Eliza, our fighter, then summons an echo, again rolls a 21 to hit. Eliza's player is always saying that she rolls so poorly, and yet in combat it's just constant double digits, and usually quite high as well. She gets a lot of numbers above 20, not critical hits as such, but definitely above 20. She rolls a 21 to hit, and she does 13 damage to one of the goblins. I think, yeah, that's right. It's Echo, and I believe he's attacking the bigger goblin boss towards the right of the room. This is where our new player comes in, who is supposedly in one of the cells that we could have seen towards the right of Emil, Shoria, and Eliza. More, I guess, towards the right of Emil and Shoria, in that it's the lowest room to the right in this arena. So we then come across, and I've pronounced it incorrectly, but their name is Elianya Tosscobble, and the party was just howling in laughter when this name was revealed, because I wasn't able to join the meet and greet on Wednesday, so I had to sort of meet this player and exchange words, so to speak, which our DM took the mick out of me saying exchange words rather than just talk. So anyway, Ellie, this player Ellie, she bursts this door open from her cell. She has a manacle still attached to her, and she bursts this door down. She barrels out of the cell, and the goblin in front of this door is just splattered on the floor. I think he's knocked prone. Yeah, he is. He's knocked prone. She takes, I think, one of the weapons from this goblin, unless she was locked in the cell with her weapons, and she flashes a blade and cuts through the air as she's dodging past Shoria. She's seeing that this halfling, this stout halfling woman, no more than 3 feet tall, is dashing away, slicing through the air, just trying to get to any foe she can. And with expert precision, she actually manages to hit. She uses her advantage. I don't understand rogues entirely, but she rolls like a 10 on her first hit and she misses. But the second one, like, she rolls. Oh, that's right. Yeah, she rolls, I think, a 10 to hit and she succeeds. And then she rolls 19 plus 5 damage to do 24 damage to a goblin nearby. I'm sorry if I'm getting all these details wrong. In fact, yeah, I think it was the goblin right in front of her. She does, like, because she's an arcane trickster, so she does thunder damage on top of the sneak attack and all this kind of stuff. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, she kills the jailer, so she's killing the one in front of her, and then she skirts past everyone else with astonishing dexterity, and just carries on. Emil then decides to bless the party. He gives us 1d4 on any attack roll or save, and I always forget to use Shoria's guidance and Emil's blessings, so I do apologise to the players of those characters because I need to be reminded all the time. And the thing is that I do roll quite badly in this game, so I could do with doing that in the future. That's definitely some feedback that I need to take on board for myself. The top goblin, so to speak, moves towards Eliza and flanks. Our DM is using flanking rules in this, which I quite like. And it goes both ways as well for players and creatures. The top goblin moves to Eliza and flanks. It rolls an 8 and misses, and then it tries to flank again and rolls a nat 1. So I think it's like with flanking you get like advantage, and it rolls a nat 1. And Eliza just easily dodges this attack. So then there's the goblin on the right who tries to take a swing, attacks 20. I think it does. Yeah, I think it just gets a 20. Rolls 3 damage and disengages now to try and move towards me. Now then, this it's now the goblin boss's turn. He uses a bonus action to disengage from Eliza's echo. He moves to me and he uses 2 attacks. He rolls a 7 first and he misses, and then he swings again with, I think, a scimitar. And hits for 21 attack and does 3 damage, and now I'm at 10 HP. And the DM was really good with this, actually. It's something I have to give credit for. Was he constantly described the state my character was in. I have 24 HP maximum, but I was now below half health. And they constantly mentioned how bloodied and beaten up my form was. But as if I think to sort of demonstrate, like you know, John, you really do need to heal Garveld up now. So, fair enough. But no, I can take a licking but keep on ticking, so to quote the Wasp lyric. Yes, so I use a Word of Radiance, the trap cantrip, which I may need to get rid of, to be honest. It's a Constitution saving throw of 12, I believe. The boss takes 4 damage, but the bottom goblin, whoever that was, yes... Okay, I think I got it. Yeah, I think one of them survives. Anyway, Shoria's turn. She uses an Eldritch Blast to hit... Did I describe Shoria's turn earlier? Oh yes, she does. She hits for 19, deals 13 damage after my turn previously. I do apologise, Shoria, for missing that. Yep, so... Shoria then casts another Eldritch Blast, 17 to hit, and she does 5 damage. And she's really good at bringing, when she wants to do damage, she does really good damage. Never mind just the hit roll. Shoria's damage as well, is critical to the game. Even if she's not killing stuff outright, she does wound them spectacularly well. So I can't wait to see how the Eldritch Invocations of later levels come about and help. So then Eliza decides to move around and flank the top goblin. She rolls a 17 to hit and she does 5 damage. She trips him up. She also tries to attempt to trip him up. But unfortunately she... Oh yes, that's right, yes. Yeah, so I think she, like how another goblin slashed the back of her calf, she also jabs the back of his as well. He rolls a strength save of 13 but he fails as he got a 2. He's now prone. Ellie, realising now that we're friends, not foe, she gets a 21 on a rapier attack to hit another goblin and does 5 damage and just destroys him by repeatedly... Oh yes, that's right, she jumps into him and plunges the blade into him. I love the description of that. And she's also shouting as well, "This is for everything you did!" And just proceeds to just jam this quite fine blade into her, at least according to Eliza. Emil then attacks the prone goblin that Eliza had brought down with advantage. Uses the Emil special, which is to say using his Warhammer Old Faithful and missing. And then the goblin stands and turns to Ellie, because now the combat is essentially over. This goblin, this final remaining one, is now saying, "No hard feelings, hey?" and now new a new halfling party member, I don't know why I was struggling to say that, responds with, "Very hard feelings, you locked me up." And there's a phrase that rings in our heads now when he says, "Wrong place, wrong time." which is, of course, a reference to the first episode. Sometimes the right person in the wrong place can make all the difference. Now, we're deciding what we're going to do with this final remaining goblin. Shoria's not overly pleased that we're letting goblins live, and this displeasure continues later on as we end up allowing this goblin to live, but not only that, but sort of giving them food and water, because they are basically going to help us move further into the dungeon. Ellie now says that she's not here to fight goblins, so she's fine with letting this one live, and we all eventually say, fine, okay, we'll let this live, on the proviso that it's actually going to help. Now, how is this goblin going to help? Well, Ellie's here because she was locked up. Obviously, I've just told you that she was locked up, but she's here because she had something stolen from her very recently, a family heirloom, and despite the warnings that she shouldn't try and be a hero, she's decided to go and try and liberate this this item from the goblins who have stolen it. But unfortunately, she couldn't take them all on her own, and she has now been captured. So, so basically she wants this heirloom back. And she hasn't revealed what the item is, only that it's a box. And that's only part of things. So, at this point we're deciding, okay, so this goblin now is trying to back towards one of the doors. Eliza attempts to grapple him. She rolls 11 on a strength check and she fails, but this goblin's now sort of backing up into another corner instead of just the door. So now that Eliza and Ellie are comparing rapiers, don't ask, this goblin is now slowing down, realizing that he's no longer in that much trouble. I think he's disarmed at this point. He's dropped his weapons and he's now just sort of cowering. He's wanting to know if he can live. So we're now trying to find out where Ellie's box has gone to. I could have said that far better. I do apologise, Ellie. We're now trying to find out where this artifact, this heirloom, is. And the goblin we're now questioning says, well, there is a path you can take, but there was a cave-in. And it was caused by... it was a cave-in. There were screams, and there was a cave-in, and that's all we know. So, we get this goblin to... dig. I forgot to mention as well earlier, I do apologise again for my notes being all over the place. Just as with this goblin is trying to back into one of his doorways earlier, Eliza's shadow, she commands a shadow to disappear and reappear behind the goblin, and he sort of lands back into it. Turns around, not realizing what's there, and it's sort of oily and not permeable. And I love the DM's description of how the shadow works and how it works later on in one of the final moments of the session. So, Shoria is now going to try and intimidate the goblin into digging this cave in so that we can get out towards the southwest of the dungeon. And she rolls a 20. And so this goblin is now going, dig, 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 dig. And he's now just sort of like clawing away at these rocks. His fingers are going to be blistered and sore and whatnot, but he doesn't care. He's just carrying on. Meanwhile, well, as this is going on, because Emil is a DMPC, he's basically just keeping watch over the goblin. He's not really doing much else. The rooms are checked. There are 2 living quarters. One is just contains 3 beds, and one contains 2 beds and a table with a bastardized version of cards, as our DM says. But in this room, there are also two major artifacts. The two major artifacts that leave this room are a ring and a rod. Both have magical enchantments, but only Ellie can find what types of magic they are, and even then she can't really identify the properties of the ring. So we're going to spend about an hour attuning to them. Now, Ellie and Shoria, they now return to the room with the campfire. We've got the light embers burning. We can hear the goblin hurriedly digging away, and I'm piling up bodies ready to almost put onto the bonfire, but then decide, according to the party, it will attract unwanted attention and it's going to smoke up this underground room. Generally not a good idea. So I place them in Ellie's former cell and sort of wrap them in the blankets that were there. And we're just going to have a fairly short rest and sort of get attuned to these magic items we have. So Shoria's being given this rod. And as she takes the rod, she's transported, or at least so she thinks, she's been transported to this magical forest realm. And approaching her is a fairy. And not just any fairy, it is in fact the Queen of the Fairies, Titania, if I'm correct in thinking that. I know that she's the Queen of Fairies in Shakespeare's works. I don't know if that's the case for the Forgotten Realms. I really must read up on that, because everyone else has been doing their reading on Kellenfall. So it's only fair I do the same for them. So she's been given this rod, and Shoria has only really been spoken to by Titania essentially once, and that is essentially to avenge Stefan and use her powers for essentially Titania's own entertainment. And this is the same as well, that Shoria is not used to speaking to royalty, fey or otherwise. And so she is sort of stumbling over her words, expectedly. She doesn't really know what to do or say. Other than basically, she just carries on as she's going to, doing, sowing chaos in the way that Titania wants. She's very playful, is this Titania character. She's not stoic in any sense of the word. She's very she's very cunning, I find. There's something going on with her, as you would expect from a fairy. And they're having words, and eventually Shoria is at least given some comfort, I think. Or maybe she's given some anxiety, because now she's not just spoken to her goddess this one time, she's also seen patron. I do apologise. That's what Garveld would call Titania a goddess, because he doesn't quite get warlocks. So he imagines that this is just a matter of PR, I guess. Like clerics have the gods have a better PR department than cleric patrons, but still. So then, as she's returned back to this cave that we were in before, Ellie's sort of just looking at her as like, are you going to take this then? And not much time has passed, only a couple of seconds, and sort of Shori's just been frozen there, sort of. And she goes, oh yes, of course, yeah, and she takes it like as if nothing's happened. But she does then explain that she has spoken to her patron, and that this is a gift from them. So that's caused a bit of not concern, but a bit of mystery. It's created a bit of mystery, and of course Garveld is pleased. He's overjoyed that someone else has had that moment where they've been able to see their god. Again, not realising, of course, that they're not a god, but a patron. I guess that's up for debate, really. If Titania is a god, recognised or otherwise, but still. So then there's much debate over who gets this ring, and Emil, being a DMPC, just says, I don't think I've got it here, but he says something. Yes, Emil says, "Just give it to the old bastard," and of course Shoria sticks up for me and says, "Which one?" I said, "The one that smells." And again, which one? As this is going on, the DM narrates a fly coming near me, and it just falls dead. and I then jokingly say I'm going to cast a ritual on the ceremony on the on that fly. In fact, I think I could. I think I could have done it. In fact, I might have done it. I'm not actually sure. Yeah, funeral rite on the fly. Anyway, so this ring is given to me, and I put it on because I think it's like it goes on 2 fingers, and I place it on, and I hear, as I'm sort of meditating on the nature of this ring, feeling the spells sort of interact with the ones that I know on the ring, I hear Kelenvor speak to me, and he says, "Sometimes fate favours my servants. There are dead that must be ministered to in these caves." And I'm filled with a righteous vigour at this point. I feel I need to do Kelenvor's duty now. So I really wanted to get involved in the digging of this caving, because it's almost done now. I think it's with a long rest soup, I'm not sure. So the dig is almost done. We can see through the other side of this hole that the goblin has made now in the cave-in, but it reveals very little. And Shorty is thinking if it would be a good idea to use an Eldritch Blast to destroy the cave-in, but because I roll a 19 investigation check, I realise that it's probably not a very good idea to do so, because it's going to bring the entire cave in, not just get rid of this bit of rubble here. So we think against it, and instead we spend a bit of time digging. I assist the dig, and Ellie and Shoria, they use their mage hand cantrips to move away the rocks, and surely enough, in no time whatsoever, the rocks are removed. Now, as we make our marching order, the goblin that was digging is now. I give him. He's earned his breakfast, so I give him a pack of rations. Oh yes, as well on the rest. It must have been a long rest, I think, because we get our spells back. So I decide to create some water for the party. I make it come down in the rain, and I managed to fill, I think, 1/10 of a gallon, which is like, I think, maybe 2 pints or something like that of water. Not that we really needed it, but I thought, you know what, it's a spell slot, I might as well use it. And yeah, so yes. Oh, I forgot to say what the ring does as well. It's a ring of spell storing, so I got a level 1 Cure Wounds, False Life, Guiding Bolt, Ceremony, and Bane, which I already had and can cast at higher levels. But you know what? I'll take it, because I'm now even more empowered to. I'm now even more empowered to cast spells. It's what I do. I don't want to cast. I don't want to use my. I don't want to cast Warhammer. I don't want to use my Warhammer. I just want to cast spells. And this ring is awesome. So I've got my fingers crossed that our next DM is going to allow us to take it into the Lost Mine of Phandelver. We shall see. I doubt it very much, but you know what? It was fun playing around with this magical item, and it was a really fun one. And it allows me to do what I want to do as a spellcaster even more. So. Anyway, yes, so we're going to march now through this very narrow corridor where the cave-in was. And the marching order is from front to back. Ellie and Eliza, they're going to be scouting. We've then got Emil, and then we've got Shoria behind Emil, and then I've got myself, Garveld, covering the rear. And we're going to be sneaky. So Ellie rolls perception. She rolls... I think it's oh yes, Ellie and Eliza, they sort of push forward, and they're going to assist each other in perception. So they roll a 15 with Shoria's guidance, and the sights of a cave, the sounds of dripping, there's bats, but we don't really guess much else. Now I want to find. It's Emil who wants to find out how the cave-in happened. I couldn't find anything before. But Emil rolls an out 20, and he finds out that there are subterranean creatures that can cause such a cave-in. This immediately begins with spam of tremors, gifs in the Discord chat, and we're now panicked as we're imagining things rummaging underneath the sand, that are somehow, I don't know, is it something like kinetic sense or something like that? I don't know what it is that they have. It's like where they can feel the things on top of the ground and they react to it. Like trapdoor spiders, I believe, have that sort of thing. I don't know. So the floor is sand, dirt, and pebbles. So it's not loose enough to be quicksand, but it's loose enough for something to rise out of it with enough force. So that's really worrying. Ellie wants to go ahead and sneak, and Ellie follows. I do apologise, I'm just going through my pictures. Yes, right. So they're going to sneak, and they don't really uncover a whole lot. Ellie has to have a stone that is enchanted because she, with a light spell, because she can't see in the dark. She has no dark vision, so she's either blinded or she's fully aware of anything, and so is anything else that can see that light in a certain radius. So she's moving south, and Eliza's just keeping back about 30 feet. As Ellie reaches the center of the southernmost room that we can see, the ground begins to tremble, and from underneath is a louder and louder rumbling sound, and eventually, spawning right in front of Ellie, is a Grick. Roll initiative. So, the rockworm that was later revealed to be a creature called a Grick, which I've only heard of in Critical Role. It's like, I think from what I understand, from what I remember, it was in campaign 1. It was like, I think like halfway through where I am right now, which is like episode 52. It's a tentacled creature with a beak, and it's like really good at grappling, and that's all I really knew. This creature rolls a 19, Eliza rolls a 16, Ellie rolls 11, Shoria rolls 10, Emil rolls 5, and of course, because I rolled a nat 1 once more, I'm on 3 initiative. But that's okay, because I really don't mind being behind on the initiative roll, being a healer. I like to see that the damage is done before I go out and heal it. Other rolls. No, I don't know what that is. Sorry, I've made a note here that I don't understand, which is not uncommon. So the rockworm now slithers over to Ellie. It attacks by rolling an 8 with its. I think it tries to do some sort of tail whip, and it rolls an 8, but it also gets 14 because of advantage on the surprise round, and I believe it hits. Yes, its tentacles wrap around her and smash her down to the ground, doing 7 bludgeoning damage. Then the beak attack. It lifts it up to its beak, having good purchase on its prey. The Grick rolls a 21 to hit and does 4 damage, and there was much talk over whether she was restrained, whether Ellie Tosscobble was restrained or grappled. So she was restrained. So Eliza sees what's going on and calls to us and rushes over. She uses a perception check, but gets a nat 1. And she can't detect anything else. If there's any more of these creatures under the sand, or maybe even above us, possibly burrowing through the ceiling or whatever. I don't know. So she runs up and she summons her Echo, and that's really all she can do. She can't fight because I think she dashed or something. I don't think she really did much more. So now it's Ellie's turn. She's restrained. She contests the strength check with disadvantage. She rolls a 19 versus the Grick, and she succeeds. Well done, Ellie. She's no longer restrained, and she's going to disengage, and she's going to run away with cunning action. So she succeeds on her first disadvantage. On a second one, she rolls 7 versus 2. So well done. Now it's Shoria's turn. She runs up and casts a vicious mockery on the the Greek in the attempt to give it disadvantage on its attacks, I believe. But unfortunately, it misses, or rather, it's resisted, in that the creature doesn't understand her language, so it can't really be mocked as such. And then when her turn is over, another Greek appears as the ground is shaking beneath her feet. Emil attacks with his Warhammer and a Smite to hit the Greek that's now just appeared next to Emil and Shoria. And I wasn't able to screenshot this fast enough. He smashes this creature. He just explodes it to smithereens with 32 damage. And he kills it, and that's it. He just kills the second Greek that was in this encounter and just does it. I roll for Toll the Dead, and I miss, and that's my turn, basically, as I'm now caught up in the action. And now there's a bit of problems now where Eliza and Ellie are the only two combatants against this southernmost Greek. So they have to find out a way to basically kill it, because it's chitinous. It's got a very tough hide, and they've got piercing weapons. So they're going to have to find a way to get into it. So as opposed to like sort of slashing away at it, because they've got rapiers. So Eliza is now going to flank this gigantic worm creature. She rolls a 24 to hit, and she succeeds. And she, I didn't get the damage here, but she plunges her rapier into the creature's back, essentially, and she manages to get underneath the blades. And I think she actually managed to chip one of the chitinous blades off and get right into its most fleshy bits in its back. And she seems to do a lot of damage. I mean, on a 24, she naturally would. Ellie rolls a 16, and she does 8 plus 7 plus 2 damage, and that's 17 damage total. And the way she kills this is that she electrocutes this creature by, again, thrusting with her rapier, I do believe, and she's splitting the chitinous shell off it, because the electrocution is it's of such great magnitude that it just bursts, essentially. Upon seeing Ellie returning battered and bloodied from this encounter, I cast a Cure Wounds of level 1 from the ring, and I restore 7 health points to her. So it's not great, but it's not terrible, and it's enough to keep her going, at least. So I've put here, Emil's dead chuffed with his kill. He rolled 3 8s on, I think it was like 4d8s for like his smite, or 3d8s, and he got 3 8s, and it was a high number, I can tell you that much, because I haven't got all the notes here, and he hadn't explained how it went down. So Ellie rolls stealth once more to go forward. She gets 11, and we have the Pink Panther music now, which may well be the title of this video, something along the lines of the Pink Potato, which is going to come up soon, or the Pink Tabaxi is how I was thinking about it earlier. Yeah, so she's doing this sort of walk where she's got her hands like that, and she's sort of tiptoeing along, very much like the goblin sneak animation in World of Warcraft, if you've seen that. So yeah, and it suits a halfling, I think, and other such smaller races. So we're carrying on, and we don't really see a whole lot until we get to the north and southwest of the dungeon. We see now the entrances to what looks like a tomb, and so far I've been disappointed with these tomb-like entrances. They haven't led to a tomb so far. However, we decide that we're going to take the northwesternmost route, and we're going to have a look at what's there. Ellie rolls a 25 stealth check, a nat 20, congratulations, but she's blind as a bat, so she can't really see anything, but hey, no one can see or detect her in any other way either, as she's carrying on through this northern chamber. A perception check of 13 reveals no traps as we're walking along. There's nothing behind the door that leads in there. There's no scraping on the walls like there was earlier, so I'm guessing those weapons must have been the weapon mark, the sort of scraping marks on the walls must have been like goblins not really taking care of their weapons. Oh, hey, it may have even been Ellie's manacles. I have no idea whatsoever. So we're now continuing on. There's a door. Shadia rolls a 19 sleight of hand with a mage hand, and she opens the door that was completely unlocked. We roll perception to detect any life in this room. Shadia rolls 16, but it's hard to tell. There's no signs of any sort of goblinoid activity here. So we're going to continue on. The marching order remains the same. Ellie's moving on, and she sees a statue ahead. Fully prepared to be run over by an overly excited death cleric, she decides to step out of the way of the door as she notices there's a statue, and she goes further into the room and reveals that there are 4 pillars and quite a large space for potential combat to take place. There are also 2 doors, and one has, I believe both or one has the emblem of the Flaming Fist. Now this statue that's standing there, we're having a look. Eliza checks to see if there's anything about this room that's magical. There's some torches, but there's an arcane check of 8 that reveals that the lights dance. This pleases you, and I like that description. The statue we can't really identify at all, other than it's a knight with a sword. We also see in the corner of this, or rather in one of the corners of this room nearest to the northeasternmost door, a dead goblin lying on the ground with a box in its hand. As Eliza's looking at this slain goblin, she turns back to the statue and notices there's blood on this statue's blade, as if to say that maybe this statue is sentient. It is the reason why this goblin is being killed, because there's no other combatants in the room that we could tell of. I'm standing in front of the statue anyway, looking it over, just in magnificent at the craftsmanship. The way RDM describes me running towards this statue is, what's this? I effing love statues. And it's not entirely untrue, to be honest. I'm running over to the statue, I have a look at it, and I can only tell it's a beautiful statue, and that's it. Ellie's sneaking around. She rolls a nat 20 plus 5, and she's gone. Again, she just completely disappears into the ether as we're looking around this room. Ellie checks the goblin's corpse. She uses 19 on a mage hand sleight of hand check, and she takes the box that it's hugging. She also pokes the goblin as well to see if it's still alive, and there's some pus that leaks out of its eye, but otherwise nothing else. And she picks up the box, and she just hugs it. She holds it as tightly as she can. Eliza's rolling perception. She sees no dusty footprints anywhere, so again, no sign of other activity. There are 4 large pillars. Eliza triggers an investigation check from me as she moves forward. And I look at the statue, and there are runes that run down the sword. One of the runes catches my eye as it becomes visible, but I think it's like stuck halfway into the ground, as if to say there's more to this weapon that's tucked away, almost as if it's like sunk in dirt rather than in the stone that the platform it seems to be on, as if the sword can be lifted up, essentially. So the statue moves. Oh yes, the sword is now moving. Only very slowly to begin with, but now I sort of relay that information to the party that the sword is moving, and now the statue's moving. I command it to halt. I do so again louder, and then I compel it in the name of Kellenvor to halt. It does not listen. It moves very, very slowly in between these two, in a wall between these 2 doors, and it asks who we are and what is our purpose here. Unfortunately, I then have to say all words to that effect. I hadn't got it all down because I'm writing so much down. I mean, look at how much I do, yeah? This is it. So I couldn't really get it all down at the same time. So we're trying to... Oh, yes. Yes. We... Oh, yes. I speak to it in the 4 languages I know. Abyssal, Celestial, Dwarvish, and Common. And it turns its head to me, but then it grinds back. And Shoria talks to the statue. She rolls a perception with advantage. She gets a 17. And she says that, look, we are here to put an end to the encroaching darkness that you speak of. Because this statue's asking about this darkness that we've been told about by Silas, the prophet. And he says that this statue is bound here. And it moves forward and it turns to Shoria just before he returns to the pedestal where he was and says, "He was my friend." And he says this a few times now. I want to know more about this statue. I want to know if it's the work of necromancy. I want to know if it's arcane, if it's a religious construct, if it's mechanical. I roll an investigation check of 14 to find that he's a hybrid of, I guess, stonework and soul capture magic. So he's a soul captured automaton. Shoria asks if I can free him, and I ask, and the automaton really now just only speaks in riddles. "He was my friend. He deserves better. He deserves honor." And I thought, right, that means no tomb robbing for us then, like we had thought previously. I rolled a 17 religion check to see if this creature is bound in the service of necromancy. Like, is this creature... Is this statue a slave? Was this created by the Lich King? And our DM tells us this sort of very vague story that, I'm not gonna lie, almost brought a tear to my eye when I heard it. I got really emotional reading this because it was so beautifully put, and I guess this is like the lost chord for me. It's a speech that I couldn't write down. This is but a tribute, and essentially it goes along the lines of this person. This statue was indeed a person, but they had served the Ember Knight so closely and were so inspired that they chose, for whatever reason, to stay and look after this tomb. That they would watch over it for eternity. That even though the Ember Knight is gone, he still wants to stay. He still chooses to stay in service. And what got me as well is, like, because you are not a military man, Garveld, you're not going to know the bond that this man had with his comrade. Perhaps they were Mole. Perhaps they were roommates. Who knows? I would like to make a point at the end of Lost Man Found Over, though, to come back here and just check to see if I can put this guy to peace and finish his holy duty. I wanted to cast Funeral Rite on the Knight. Oh yes, I'm told as well that I can cast a Funeral Rite. Now there's a bit of confusion as to whether I should cast it on the Knight or the Ember Knight. So the statue or the Ember Knight. And eventually I decided, okay, I'm going to cast a Funeral Rite on the Knight. On the Ember Knight, yeah. So we tried to use... So Ellie and Shoria tried to use their mage hands on the door leading to the Ember Knight's tomb, and unfortunately they don't... they're unable to succeed. This requires us to... I think the doors open them... Oh, no. The mage hands don't work. The doors are too heavy. So The tomb is revealed to us, and Eliza and Emil push the doors open together. Eliza's checking for traps, and she doesn't see anything. And they step in, and they find all manner of trinkets. They find a fair amount of wealth, and I do believe even some magical items. But we decide not to take them because of our DM's performance as well, and also as well, I think, a sense of fair play that we have got bigger things to worry about, and perhaps even the Lich King's tomb has some treasure as well. We see the skeleton of the Ember Knight holding this sword facing downwards, and the sword isn't flaming. The torch sconces on the walls are only very dimly lit as such. Ellie's detect magic once again comes into fantastic use, and the sword has an evocation enchantment on it. So that would suggest to us that evocation is sort of like, I guess, like the destruction magic of the Elder Scrolls. I far prefer the Elder Scrolls schools of magic, or World of Warcraft's magical laws. But yeah, so we reveal its evocation. So there is the idea that this could well be a flaming sword, but there's no flames coming from it yet. Before we take the sword, we think it's safest to perform a funeral rite. I roll a 15 to my religion check, and I cast the appropriate ceremony from my ring of spell storing. And again, I didn't get it down, but our DM clearly, our DM had clearly been preparing for this. I think a lot more than I had, to be honest, because I've actually got all manner of stuff for a funeral rite for Theldendra and such, and Garveld's last will and testament. I've got all this down, and I didn't have it. I didn't have this speech down because it was fantastic. And it's very much ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And it was still nice all the same, though, and it requires no material or any other sort of components, and we fulfill the act. We're filled with a sense of calm, and we eventually decide he's going to pick up the sword. I can't take it because I don't have martial proficiency in longswords. Eliza prefers a rapier, and Emil, I think, is equipped to use long swords. So he decides that he doesn't feel right taking it, and I don't know if that's more of a DM thing or if that's a character thing. But he decides that he will take it and use it, and we're all fine with him taking and use it. So he does. As he picks up the blade from the bones, the now consecrated bones of the Ember Knight, his eyes light up, and the sconces burst with flame. And Emil stares at the blade, now flaming and brightly lit up. And he says, "I think it likes me, although I'm not quite sure." So anyway, he puts it into a sheath that the DM had handily provided himself, and and Emil, now deciding that his duty is done, we're going to leave the trinkets. He says, "This place gives me the creeps. No offence, Garveld." And I say, "Oh, none taken." And then I mutter under my breath something about him being uncultured, and we carry on. Now, just as we're getting into the room where the statue was, seemingly at peace, I think. Well, no, sorry, I haven't got that, but yeah, I do apologise. Ellie is going to sort of walk away a bit and turn her back to the party and open a box. We only hear that she has to make a wisdom saving throw and that we should deafen ourselves on Discord, so we do. While this is going on, I say that once that's done, I want to check to see if there's any signs of life within the statue. The runes appear to wait for something, and I ask what the statue wants. The statue then turns to Emil, likely because he's holding the sword. And the statue says, "He was my friend. I shall watch him until the stars burn out." Which was part of his speech before. So Shoria then informs him that we performed the funerary rites that didn't take as long as the hour-long ritual before. And the statue replies, "Even in death, I still serve." So, this was it. This was it. Sorry, this was about the inspiring speech. I messed that up. Thinking this is necromancy, I roll a nat 21 for Arcana to try and determine if this is a necromantic construct. And the Ember Knight says that he was inspired in death. It is willing, but I cannot know if it is inspired by this love or any other sort of act. Again, haha, maybe they were roommates. So, we rest before we're going to head out to the Lich King's Barrow. Now, this game is now reaching about 11 o'clock, and we're thinking, right, we really want to finish this today, because we're all really having a good time. There's some great synergy with the group, and we're going to decide that we're going to have a quick out-of-character break before we continue on and just prepare ourselves for the upcoming fight. If you can hear that, that's my boiler going off in the background, so I apologise for the background noise, even though it's also the computer humming as well. Have fun. So we are now going to get onto our horse bears, and we're going to have a nice ride along to the Lich King's Barrow. As this is going on, Ellie is considering if she'll join us after this one shot, or rather adventure, that the Sword of the Ember Knight is now turned into. The DM gives us a few more bits of information as well. There's a bit of roleplay as well. There's not much, and this is something I'll go into in the feedback section later. Ellie's glad that, Emil's glad that Ellie's got her heirloom back. But Ellie puts emphasis on the fact that she's glad that she got the box back. So that tells me that whatever's in that box is in fact missing. While this is going on as well, I top the ring up with a ceremony spell I used for the Ember Knight, and I replace the one I learned or prepared for my character with Shield of Faith, which I don't think comes in terribly useful, as you're going to find out why. As we're going to the Lich King's Barrow, we're finding now that the air is becoming repugnant. The ground is blackened and mulchy. There is no life extending from this barrow. It's all just dead, and if not dead, then very, very close to being dead. Eliza's rolling a survival check of 21 at the barrow of the Lich King, and she doesn't find anything particularly useful. The ground is wilted and dying, but there are some stone pillars standing proudly, and it is cold, deathly, dramatically cold. I roll a 17 history to know about the rockery, to see if there's anything about what kind of culture might have built these sort of pillars in a sort of like henge kind of formation, or like menhirs, I guess. I don't know, I'm just going off what I read in Asterix. But I don't really find much about it other than it's like, this is like the kind of thing that druids would know about. I turn to Eliza and ask if her people would be familiar with it, and she rolls 3 for history, and nothing comes to mind. It's nothing that her people may know about. So Shoria is now rolling a 17 perception to check the environment as well, just to see if there's anything going on that she can detect. And doesn't really find any signs of life, anything sneaking up or anything like that. I was tempted to use Eyes of the Grave at this point, just to see if there are any zombies or anything like that, but no, I think the DM was getting ready for us to finally wrap this up. So we there's 2 holes in the barrow that almost look like eyes, eye slits, and we can decide either to go in the left or the right. And we decided to go into the right one. Not that it really makes much difference. We Eliza, seeing a staircase, just keeps going down and down and down further on. Eliza leads stealthily. We all roll stealth. The DM's rolling. Oh yes. While this is going on, the DM's rolling some 15, 14. I think it was just like basically to get us moving, because I don't imagine there was anything else, because I don't imagine there was anything going on that would have like changed if those rolls hadn't happened. So, or if those rolls had been got any higher or lower. So anyway, unless it was a Constitution sort of save, maybe. Who knows? Like maybe the life force was being sucked out of us. Anyway, so Eliza rolls a 16, and that's the and Ellie rolls a 15 stealth roll. Those are the only good rolls. Emil rolls a 9 and a 5, and Shorty rolls a 4. So as we're going down the stairs sneakily, Emil stumbles up, and Garveld not far behind him. Shorty tries to catch us, but also comes down with us, and we eventually come down with a clatter. Things aren't looking good. So now we have entered this barrow, and things aren't looking too good. As we enter this tomb and find nothing, and that's kind of worrying, because you'd hope to find something here, like the Lich King, so we can kill it. However, it is rather ominous that we do find a single sarcophagus awaiting on an altar to the east. And that is worrying. There are no torches, there is no light, so Ellie uses a light on a stone, and Eliza's walking around. We don't really find much. Shorty finds cobwebs, but they're nowhere near as big as the ones in the cave where we fought the spiders in the previous session. I'm going to cast Eyes of the Grave, and my senses burn with righteous fury. I get closer to the crypt, and I'm saying to the party, there's something in there. And like I'm telling you, by Kellanvor's balls, there is something in that sarcophagus. For which I will have to apologise to Kellanvor for blaspheming. But yeah, I was very, very upset by the fact that there really was undead. That this wasn't just like a chance for us to get treasure. Well, no, that's not really what it is for Garvel, but it's more like just the simple existence of the undead that was rather upsetting. So anyway, so at the end, so just before the sarcophagus, there's some walls and some torch sconces you'll see on some images that I put up on screen for you. There's some torch sconces, and anything that passes past them becomes warped in some sense. Ellie sees a potato on the floor, because we haven't got the icon for what it's actually supposed to be. There's a potato on the floor in front of the sarcophagus, and she uses a mage hand to try and go out and grab this thing, but as soon as it tries to get past the torch sconces, the hand just disappears. That's it. Ellie then tries to summon her shadow to get behind the torch sconces, but as it does, it slowly shifts and it turns to Eliza, and this shadow, this oily, inky visage of her is now sort of like festering with buboes and sores and blisters, and is now sort of like being entangled with tentacles. The shadow is quite simply wrong, and it evaporates. As this is going on, there's a voice coming from the sarcophagus. It says, "How dare you disturb me?" And then we proceed to roll initiative as the Undead King emerges. Yes, he stands over the potato, pissed. So, initiative is 20 for the Lich King. Eliza gets 16. Emil gets 15. Ellie gets 13. I get 8. And Shoria gets 3. So, this is the final combat of the session. Let's see how we do with our experimental level 3s. So the Lich King walks to Eliza with a casual stride that seems a bit off, as we soon realise, and attacks with a smoking blade. He rolls 23 to attack, which is understandable, but he also does 28 necrotic damage. Eliza is in the worst state that she's ever been, and she's now at 1 HP. She also has to make a Constitution saving throw as well, and she rolls an 18, and she's fortunate enough to survive this. Now, had she not survived that 18, if she got all that much lower on a Constitution saving throw, her 1 HP would have been her maximum hit points. So the only way anyone could aid her is basically by giving her temporary hit points, which I don't think I can do. I think False Life only applies to me. So that's not terribly good. Speaking of which, I may need to replace that spell in my ring. That's if I even get to keep it. I doubt it very much. So, the Lich King, yeah, he's over there, and he's there's not much that really he can do after doing as much as he did. Eliza still, hanging on for her dear life, summons another echo, and she rolls 11, and it unfortunately misses. She can't quite get this creature to even be knocked prone, as well as she tries to do some sort of trip attack. And the Lich King, the reason why this creature's movement is so weird to us is because it's actually floating only ever so slightly off the ground, so it can't be knocked prone. Yeah, she rolls another 2 and she misses. She uses an action surge as well to attack for 16, and she hits, and she does some damage, but she does very, very little damage because it's this shadowy figure. She gets the sense that magic isn't the only thing that's really going to do something to this creature is magic, but we don't know what kinds of magic. So Emil now unsheathes the blade. He uses a free action to unsheathe the blade, and it burns brightly, and this creature is now, this Lich King is now very, very afraid of this blade. He rolls a 2, but he misses. The sword passes through nothing, but the creature, the Lich King, he's still quite wary of this thing. Like, he knows that this means business now. That he can't. That he's not just. He's not. These aren't just your average tomb robbers or whatever. So Ellie uses her short bow, aims with a 9 and misses, and then she moves with stealth and 15 and gets away. I believe there were some other actions involved because Ellie had. In the post-game chat, had told me about how rogues work and how many actions they can get a turn, and how risky it may have been for her to get into close quarters combat. So it might have been a good idea to have the silver dagger I think Shoria was equipped with, but on the other hand, it does mean getting into a quite close quarters combat with a creature that was taking down our most formidable fighter. So there we go. I cast a guiding bolt. Enraged by the sight of this creature, but unfortunately I miss and I hit a torch sconce. I'm going to use as a bonus action Shield of Faith on Eliza, so it gives her a +2 on her AC, and I cover Shoria. Shoria hexes the king successfully, and he's also identified as a wraith. The DM had called him the Lich King to give us a red herring, so this isn't a lich, this is a wraith. So we didn't know how we were going to sort of fight. Well, we didn't know how to fight liches in the first place, so anything I knew about liches has basically gone to pot because this is a completely different creature. And now the wraith takes, according to Shoria, he was going to take disadvantage on his con checks, because I think it affects an ability score. So you get disadvantage if you're hexed. You get disadvantage on an ability score of the hexer's choosing. So that's quite good. Yeah. So she rolls a Vicious Valkyrie as well, and she rolls for Vicious Valkyrie. I do apologise. Vicious Mockery. She rolls a 9. The creature fails and it takes 5 damage and has disadvantage on weapon attacks as well. So this is something that we really that the whole party had to commend Shoria on. It's the whole disadvantage and debuffing thing. So that's something that I wanted to get involved in as well, as you'll soon find out. And this is something as well I think we've learned that we really like as well, that as we're going to be higher levels, we're going to want to do more than just damage things. We're also going to want to put creatures to sleep. Mind you, the party has already been pretty good with that, actually. Like Shoria is always using illusions and sleep and Fae presence and such. So there is a very good chance that that I think the party already knows what they're doing, and I need to get out of my video game mindset, so that'll be good. So the king is now terrified seeing this blade and swings at Emil with disadvantage. He rolls 13 at his best and misses. The blade of Emil's blade blinds the king, and the king is now going to move out of the way. He's quite clearly terrified of this thing, and he now wants to be out of its reach where possible. Emil doing this. So the king, as he moves, he gets an attack of opportunity. She rolls a 19, and she does 9 points of damage. Again, though, some resistance, but otherwise, she at least finds purchase on his shadowy form. Eliza is going to use her Greater Healing Potion. 44 plus 4 equals 12, and the Second Wind, 4 HP. Yep, so she gets 16 HP restored. Emil's going to move and use his Bless on Eliza, Ellie, and Shoria to give them, I think, advantage on saving throws, which should be useful. Dear me, I really like my Guiding Bolt, so I cast another level 1 Guiding Bolt for 14 damage and I unfortunately miss. I roll a nat 1 and I hit Emil for 14 damage, and I'm so sorry about that. I will later make it up for him, somewhat. So now Shoria, it's her turn. She rolls to attack with her Eldritch Blast. She rolls an 8, and unfortunately she just misses, and she ends her turn behind, still standing behind me. The king is going to move away again, and he moves to Emil and attacks me, or attempts to attack me. He rolls 13, and he just misses. Eliza moves back and has her Echo go forward. Rolls 14 and hits and does 5 damage, but again still having trouble hitting. Emil smites the king. It shrieks. The shadows themselves are light with 16 damage. Ellie runs, stabs with a booming blade. It does 19 to hit, and a cunning action to disengage, which she does 9 plus 9 plus 1d8 damage. So she does at least 20 damage when he moves away. And Ellie's just absolutely killing it there, quite literally in this sense. Onto the 16th turn now. I cast a Guiding Bolt. I roll a 16 at level 2, and I do 22 damage. Finally, I swear that the dice gods have been looking after me today, because I cast a 22. I also heal Emil for 9 health points with, I think, Healing Word as a bonus action. And the final turn is when Shoria gets advantage from the Guiding Bolt that I cast on this guy, because I think it gives advantage on all attack rolls. She gets Eldritch Blast plus her Bless, so 1d4, and she rolls 21 damage. She rolls a 21 to attack, and she does only 4 damage, but it's enough to kill the Lich King.
Has anyone got a flannel, because I've got spunk on me left moccasin?
So when she's asked how she wants to do this, her eyes go purple, she extends the rod in her hand, and she goes, Saucisha! which in Portuguese you'll find out is what the wraith yells out, sausage, and he's taken away. So which I thought was quite clever on our DM's part to include. But the thing is that only she sees what happens next. We see that the shadows are sort of twirling around and whisked away into the air, but what's actually happening, what's causing that, is Titania is appearing and behind him, and she rubs this wraith's chin and says, "Oh, we're going to have so much fun," and just whisks him up into the air as the wails and screams of damned souls are just filling the air and eventually just go taken away into nothing. We then go to the altar, where we are going to decide after a sit down. We're going to go to the altar. Ellie's mage hand picks up the potato, and she puts this speeding potato that just rushes towards her into this box. And I think she later then tells us what it is. We check for treasure, well, rather Shoria does, and she finds gold rings with the rubies, and with consultation with the dwarves, myself and Emil, we find that they're worth approximately 250 gold pieces. Bracelets also 250 gold pieces. There's a shawl as well called the Death Shroud, I believe it was. Not as fancy, but it was made for royalty, that's worth 100 gold pieces, and a pile of shining coins worth 1,100 gold pieces. And as Shoria is just stuffing all this money into a bra, she has to roll a Constitution saving throw to save a spine, and she rolls a 15, so that was good. Well done, Shoria. Of course, it's probably a lot of practice at this point with how much gold we've had to ask her to carry around. Good almighty. Anyway, so so Eliza puts on a ring, and so Shoria and Eliza, while they're sort of going over the loot, they're playing dress up with the shawl and the bracelets and the rings and whatnot. As this is going on, I look at the tapestries. I don't really find anything else. I use Eyes of the Grave and don't detect any undead in the room anymore. So I take one of the tapestries and I fold it up and put it in my pouch. The tapestries across from the north and south of the sarcophagus. Ellie's then going to use Detect Magic to find any magic on the bracelet. And this is where we have a very, very good point to need. Ellie's holding this bracelet and it's cold, but it gets colder and colder and colder as she approaches Eliza with it. Eventually it gets so cold that she can't hold it much longer, and she asks Eliza, "Is this cold to you?" Eliza holds it and doesn't feel anything. The cold disappears entirely from the both of them. This bracelet, as Eliza finds out, is a bracelet of the Undersun.
First up, it's
Eliza.
and hold on to your seat because he's brought in an absolute showstopper.
I apologise for the interruption. Yes, the bracelet of the Undersun. It grows cold when drow elves are nearby. Or dark elves. The ring can also cast daylight as well. I'm not overly familiar with this spell. I'm fairly certain it's more than just like a common light spell, that it can actually do radiant damage, but I am not a druid, I don't know these things. Unless maybe clerics get it. I don't know. It may be something I want to look into, because if I seem to remember from like Critical Role, where I think Keyleth used it against the vampires, so maybe it could come in handy there. I don't know. Anyway, so yes. Now the DM points out that it's interesting that it got so cold with Eliza. So either this this bracelet is growing cold because of Eliza, or possibly because of her echo. So that's rather interesting. As as this sort of plot point is revealed in Eliza's story, Ellie starts growing tired now we defeated the king. And she looks at the box and it slowly fades from her vision. And she finds herself, again, after feeling rather woozy, finds her arms restrained by manacles. She sees a mother and a child sobbing, also in shackles. Everyone else's eyes snap open, and Sildar Hullwinter asks, "Are you ready to move out?" We're back in Trezendar Manor. And that is the end of the Sword of the Ember Knights. I have to say, it was a phenomenal adventure. Very good dungeon crawl. I probably will do a review of it. I say phenomenal adventure. If I do a review of it, I'm probably going to have to be a bit more, rather a bit less enthusiastic about it, I think. Because it was a great dungeon crawl, but that's what it was. It was a dungeon crawl reduced to its most base components, with just enough plot to drive the party on, just enough guidance, basically. And it leaves a lot to the DM, a lot of blanks for the DM to fill in. And this is one of the sort of common criticisms of D&D 5th edition, in that the writing isn't particular. It leaves a lot up to the DM to figure out themselves and put into homebrew and things like that. And I think this is maybe something that may have some of those criticisms. But the way our DM did it was fantastic. It was a great one-shot, and I can easily see this being an adventure you can fit quite easily into a side, as like a side quest into an adventure to an already existing campaign. So yeah, it was quite fun. A couple of things as well that I just want to add. Finally, yes. So the main villain was a wraith, not a lich. That was a red herring that the DM had given. Probably so we couldn't metagame it, even though we could have found the adventure. But still, I mean, that's sort of going out of one's way to cheat. We'd also revealed as well that had Eliza not succeeded on a Constitution saving throw, max HP would have been 1 HP. I had the clutch moment. I like that word, clutch, in regards to gaming. I didn't know what it meant until I got the clutch, so I'm like, great, yay. Yeah, we were supposed to fight the Guardian, but the DM threw us a bone because I think partly because they wanted to get this wrapped up, but also as well because we have taken a bit of a beating, and we're probably not going to stand much of a chance against this. Like, if it's some sort of golem creature, from what I understand, it was probably going to be resistant to bludgeoning damage, piercing and slashing. So I don't know what we could have done, especially without the sword. So yes, as well, the Lich King, or rather the Wraith King, could have turned Eliza into a spectre if she had gone down. I think even if she was knocked unconscious, she could have returned to a spectre, and that she would have had the stat block and fight against the party. So that would have been rather harrowing. The potato was in fact a pipe, and this was revealed at like 5 minutes past 12 in the morning. And there was also something as well, and this has now been resolved, but I want to add it just in case. I don't know if Ellie wants to watch these session recaps or anything, but just to put in my own words, Ellie had given feedback of like telling people that you don't want to roleplay with them is a real turn off, and this was not. I'd say it's a breakdown in communication, but that's sort of putting the blame on Ellie for misunderstanding, and that's not that wasn't the case. What had happened was the reason why we tend not to role play all that much in this session is because we were frequently pressed for time by not necessarily by a current DM, but by a previous DM Drax, where we had spent a lot of sessions. We'd spent about 3 sessions just doing roleplay stuff, where there's no role players in dice rolling play, ROLL play, as opposed to ROLE play. But we'd explained that we've been rushed in the past, and that's the reason why we said, look, we do want to role play. It's something we all enjoy doing. Well, I enjoy doing it, but I'm not very good at it. But this is something that might be better off in the main adventure if you're going to join our group. And I think they seem to be okay with the idea of joining for a session, for a future session. So we welcome Ellie's character. We welcome Ellie and her player to the group. I hope that we'll be seeing them, the Arcane Trickster Rogue, in our next in the next session of Lost Mine of Fandelver, whenever that's going to be. Future sessions as well. Interesting that we might be using a different system to play to play some RPGs while we're waiting for our next DM, because they've got a campaign of their own. I think they're probably about 2 or 3 sessions into that now, out of 6 they suspect. So with any luck, I mean, I was saying in the chat, please be Buffyverse, please be Buffyverse, please be Buffyverse RPG. I own 4 of the books, and I only recently got the Magic box as well. That was a good find. It looks as though it was printed on demand though. So, but yeah, I'm like, please be Vampire the Masquerade or something like that, you know. But yeah, I think we'd all had a good time. Yeah, I think we all had a good time. I think the situation towards the end with the feedback was explained, and that my stance on roleplay is I prefer to interact with environments. I prefer to like roll a lot of dice. So like I'll do the arcane checks, I'll do the religion checks, I'll do the history checks. Like the next character I want to play, like a mage called Avon, is going to let's have a look, because he's a variant human, because of course he is, and he has the skill expert feat, I believe it is. So level 1 he gets like an extra 3 proficiencies. So I really would like to play, so that's going to aid me a bit more, so that I can do, he's got the skilled feat, so he gets proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools he trusts. So calligrapher, supplies, nature, and persuasion. So now he can do the arcana checks, and the history checks, and the investigation checks, and the nature checks, and the religion checks, and he gets a +5 to, all those things. So that's really my kind of thing. I'd far prefer to do that kind of thing. But I mean, it's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to role play with Ellie's player and character. It's that I'd rather leave that to other people, because they love doing it. The rest of the group's there. Me, I treat D&D like beer and pretzels. It's like I'm just there to have fun. I'm there to be the third wheel. I'm there to have some fun. So but otherwise, it was all sorted. The session was fantastic. I'm, as always, grateful for my group and the players there, and our DM for taking the time to run that adventure for us. And it's given me, that was my first sort of taste of homebrew and third party content. So to say it's not a published module, which is the kind of thing I would sort of be used to, I might even actually start subscribing to the Patreon of the people who made this. Let me just have a look at who they are, because I didn't credit them before. Yes, Adventure Awaits are the guys who made this, and they seem to have all manner of things for different levels. Like I'm looking at their banner on Patreon. I'm seeing 5th level, 4th level, 11th level adventures, a 15th level one, 3rd levels as well, 9th level. I'm interested in seeing how they will do other adventures as well. So, I look forward to seeing what other adventures they may have, and maybe even running them and hopefully reviewing them. But in the time being, I probably will review this one, and I will also disclose as well that if I am subscribed to their Patreon, that'll be involved there. I'm not affiliated in any way with them either as well. That should be made abundantly clear at the beginning of the next video. That I do on this Sword of the Amber Knight. But otherwise, fantastic adventure, fantastic group. So I'm going to stop babbling now. Thank you ever so much for watching. Take care, and may your dice remain clacky and you roll rather well. I'm John, your #1 source for #2 session recap. Start